Essentially, what we're going to do is, after this brief sort of welcome introduction from myself, we're going to have some experiences from our TravelPlanPlus partners. They're going to explain about the local travel plan networks we're running in this project. Then we're going to have a break, and then we're going to have breakout groups where we look at different aspects of local travel plan networks, and more information will be given about those later. And then after that we'll have lunch. Okay, just a brief introduction to the TravelPlanPlus project then. Essentially, travel plans, or site-based mobility management in European language, have been in evidence since the 1970s, and in Europe, well, that was in America, and in Europe since about the middle of the 1990s. And basically, a travel plan is a package of measures that's designed to deliver sustainable transport objectives. And from a transport planning perspective, travel plans are quite efficient ways, effective ways of delivering transport benefits, both to organisations and also to communities as a whole. But there are various barriers that stop organisations taking up travel plans. And one of the big barriers is the fact that you, as an organisation, you need to devote resources to setting up travel plans. And so in the United States and Canada, since the sort of 1980s really, they've been gathering that sort of information together in the form of transportation management associations, which basically means that a group of organisations work together to deliver travel plans, really. Now, this idea has started to gain traction in the UK for about the last 5 years, and in the Netherlands as well. But throughout the rest of Europe, we haven't really had local travel plan networks, as we call them, on any great number of them at all. There's very, very few. And so the idea behind this project was to set up these local travel plan networks to see if they would work in a European context. And so essentially, a group of 6 partners, Mobicon and Loughborough University, as expert partners, and then 4 implementation partners, the council in Bage, which is in near Barcelona in Spain, the Swedish Transport Authority in Stockholm, working with Arlanda Airport, Travel for Work, which is part of Cambridgeshire County Council here in Cambridge, and Győr City Council. We all came together and basically started work on this project called TravelPlanPlus 2 years ago. And overall, this project is due to finish around next April. So it'll be a 2.5-year project. And basically the idea is that this project will set up and operate 4 local travel plan networks in different countries for different types of sector. And we're monitoring these sites to see how well they work, what the problems are, what the issues are, and so on. And then we say to Europe, we've set up this, and we've come up with processes and procedures and so on as to how these local travel plan networks might be spread and disseminated further across Europe. And the object is basically to support the businesses, to give the businesses in those organisations and those local travel plan networks a series of benefits, and also to deliver transport benefits and energy benefits. So we're trying to reduce energy as well. That's the point of the project. So the project is funded by Intelligent Energy Europe, which is a part of the European Commission. And as I should say, the final results will come out next April. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is to just introduce a member of our advisory committee. This on my left here is Dr. Jennifer Dill, and she works at Portland State University, which is based in Portland in Oregon on the west coast of the United States. And Jennifer's been working with transport management associations for quite a number of years, and she also works on wider sustainable transport issues. And the idea is that Jennifer's here to kind of give us the benefit of 20 years of American experience in developing these local travel plan networks, to offer comments and so on, and observations, reflections, if you like, throughout the day. So what I'd like to do now is to hand over to Jennifer, and perhaps she can give us some initial thoughts on Transport Management Association's local travel plan networks from the US and North American perspective. Thank you. Right. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Largely, I was struck when I was first invited to participate in this project, and since I've been reading the materials coming out of it, I was very surprised in the U.S. in the transportation field. We're often looking to Europe as the models that we wanted, particularly in Portland, Oregon. We're often considered a leader in the U.S. in terms of sustainable transportation, so we're often looking to Europe for examples. And it did strike me that this is one area where perhaps the U.S. has been ahead and an earlier adopter of these types of programs. And so the roles are reversed, which I think is pretty interesting. Though as I've read through the material so far in terms of evaluating where the projects are at this point, it also strikes me that there are a lot of similarities. All of the issues and problems that have come up and the barriers are all the same barriers that these types of efforts in the U.S. have faced as well. And so I was reflecting a little bit on sort of thinking of how we've progressed in the U.S. in those 20 years or so of experience. And a lot of these programs started in the 1980s and 1990s, and a lot of it was spurred in a lot of cases, particularly in California and in a few other places, for air pollution reasons, trying to control smog. And a lot of it came out of a regulatory environment. So there are several states and cities that actually adopted regulations that required employers to do something to reduce their number of employees driving to work alone. And those types of either local ordinances or state laws, and it even was adopted at the federal level in 1990 in our Clean Air Act, really prompted a lot of activity in this area. There was backlash to a lot of those regulations later on in the 1990s. In a lot of places they were rescinded. The one thing we've learned is a lot of the, we call them transportation management associations, primarily in the U.S., a lot of them have continued on. And so I was trying to think, what are some of the characteristics of the ones that are still successful? So under a non-regulatory environment in most cases, where are they still working? And one of the key things, and we see this in Portland and a lot of other urban areas in the U.S., is an agreement on what is the problem that you're trying to solve. What is the motivation? There needs to be some clear motivation for businesses to change their way of doing things. And in a lot of cases, some of the common themes that I've seen in different ones in terms of the problem that they're trying to address are things like parking supply, that there's parking constraints that they need to deal with, congestion and access issues, particularly in areas that are industrial and have freight involved as well. Because in most cases, there really needs to be a business case for doing this if there isn't a regulation, or even if there is still a regulation, to really do a good job, there needs to be a business case beyond other motivations. Some of the other things, having top-level support within the businesses, so very high-level support. They never seem to succeed if it's just mid-management and below providing the reasons for doing it. That there's often some sort of a benefit of working collectively. Either it's because on their own none of the businesses are big enough in scale to do effective programs, or perhaps by joining forces together they can work to lobby, convince the transit agencies or whoever to provide better service, that there's some some reason to act collectively. The other thing is, clearly in the ones that I've seen that has succeeded, there's some dynamic leader staffing the organization with a lot of energy, who's very committed to the cause, who helps get things going, which if we talk about problems and challenges, one of the things that I've seen in the ones that struggle is a lot of staff turnover. For whatever reason, some of these organizations face a lot of staff turnover, which often stifles success. And then just one more thing, usually having a pretty well-defined geography. That it's very clear that the organization covers a certain territory and that territory is connected for some reason. Either you share the same transit service area or the same parking supply or the same problem or something, that it's well-defined. The ones that are not well-defined don't seem to be as successful. So those are just few things, and I know in reading so far what I've read about the program, a lot of those issues are popping up in your efforts as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what's going on and helping everyone through this process. So thank you.
Yes, sit there. Do you want to be on camera?
No moving about them.
We can if you like. Go for it. Yeah, so take it, but not too high up. Let's change the slide. That one and that one.
Okay.
Okay.